If you haven't heard about Gwen Shamblin, she was like this cult leader that passed away in a plane crash. I don't remember how many years ago. But anyways, her victims didn't start coming forward until after she passed away. She was spiritually abusing her congregation, and a lot of them came forward, but it wasn't until after she passed away. The scary parallels between Gwen and Joni are kind of crazy, but we're going to look at them real quick. Well, it's not real quick. This is kind of long. And the girl that put this whole little documentary together, let me see what's her name. Not the good girl. She did such a good job, like took all the work out of it. I mean, it's just look.
This will be a program unlike anything you have ever done, but in it you will find the truth.
Gwen Shamblin was hailed as the diet guru for decades. She created a thriving business with customers around the world and helped men and women change their lives. Gwen built massive wealth and even started her own church called Remnant Fellowship. But behind the affluence and luxury with this diet guru, preacher, and sugar mama, many found out nothing was as it seemed. This story has more twists and turns than a 90s soap opera. It contains real-life Stepford wives, a multimillionaire preacher, a failed reality show, a beauty queen who won't go down without a fight, Tarzan the sugar baby, a whole lot of hair, and even
Tarzan
an
is
FBI
Doug.
investigation.
Remnant Fellowship is now part of a murder investigation.
This true story is about success, lust, greed, betrayal, and crime. This is the rise and fall of Gwen Shamblin, the millionaire preacher with a weight loss cult.
Praise God.
Gwen married a man named David Shamblin in 1978. They had 2 children, Michael and Elizabeth. In 1986, Gwen founded Way Down, a weight loss program that could be compared to what we know today as intuitive eating.
Welcome to the Way Down Workshops home series called Way Down at Home. My name is Gwen Shamblin, and I will be your host for this 12-lesson journey away from the magnetic pull of the refrigerator that actually has a hold on your mind and your heart.
Was setting herself up to be called a prophet under God. She went on to call it a witch hunt and said that the churches who dropped her workshops would be ineffective, as members would just go down the street to other churches where her workshops continued to be held. Then, without missing a beat, Gwen became part of another scandal. Claiming religious discrimination, Gwen was sued by 5 Way Down employees who said they felt pressured to join Remnant Fellowship. In fact, the lawsuit first came after one employee was fired by Gwen for not attending Remnant Fellowship as...
Okay, remember this, because I know there's already people coming forward that used to work for Daystar, that used to work for Joni. So just remember this, the parallels are crazy. There's already people coming forward.
Gwen told her employees that attending her church was a condition of their employment. In court documents from 2001, an employee named Tanya said, quote, "I used my lunch hour to pray, and I was told by Gwen that she pays people good money to pray, and she didn't need my prayers. And it wasn't my place to decide what to pray for."
Wait.
Gwen said some people are sacrificed for the better to pray, and I was told by Gwen that she pays people good money to pray, and she didn't need my prayers. And it wasn't my place to decide what to pray for.
Didn't Joni tell Susie that she was not there for God, but she was there for Joni and to serve Joni? Did she say? Okay. Okay.
Gwen said some people are sacrificed for the benefit of others, and that's what she said.
Spiritual abuse. Okay. Sacrifice for the benefit of others. I know I've heard Jonathan and Susie say something similar. Like they're doing this for God. Like they're giving up certain rooms to certain people for God, and they're spiritual abuse. Spiritual abuse. If anything should come from this, it's going to be a lot of stuff that comes from this. But one thing should definitely be that we should spread the message to not let yourself fall victim to people telling you submit to this or do this for God. You know, like if you read your word, you know what you're doing for God. You don't have to do these extra things for people, for a man to serve God. You really don't. I mean, that's a whole nother.
When I was fired, end quote. Tanya moved from California to Tennessee after being recruited by Waydown and believing it would be a good opportunity for her family, but she would later tell the Baptist Press she almost immediately began feeling pressured by Gwen to join Remnant Fellowship. Tanya and her family attended Remnant for 2 months, but didn't like the messages they were hearing. Tanya said, quote, Gwen would tell us that grace isn't the message of God and that she is a prophet. She said the Antichrist resides within each of us. Tanya and her family decided Remnant Fellowship was
Just like Joni kept trying to tell Jonathan and Susie, oh, you have a spirit, which obviously we see who has the spirit now, right? Rachel's not off the hook either. We just had to get this out the way real quick. The crazy parallels between Gwen Shamblin and Joni Lamb. Rotten Rachel, you're not off the hook. Just give me a second, okay? But this here is exactly the same thing.
a church they wanted to attend. And it was after they left that Tanya was fired from Waydown. And she wasn't the only one. Another employee named Anita worked at Waydown for 3 years and was a member of a Baptist church. Anita told the Baptist Press she was heartbroken when
if you worked for Daystar and you were fired for something stupid like this, you should get in contact with Laura Lynn Tyler Thomas because she's doing such a good job with getting the word out. You can remain confidential, but you need to speak up and you need to get your story out there because this is crazy.
was terminated and stated that Gwen asked her to lie about her dismissal. Anita said, quote, I was told that because the direction the company was moving towards, my position was being replaced by someone who attended her Remnant Fellowship church. HR thanked me for my hard work, but said my services were no longer needed. Because I was not a member of Remnant Fellowship, I was being replaced. In the middle of being fired, Gwen sent me a letter saying that the human resources people made a mistake and I wasn't supposed to be fired, only allowed to resign. Gwen asked me to sign this letter saying that I resigned and was never fired. Well, I didn't sign it because it was not the truth.
Wait, just like Jonathan was asked to sign the NDA that he wasn't comfortable signing, do you see the parallels though? And that's just the beginning. We're just getting started.
Gwen called me personally, and that's just what I told her. They told me that I wouldn't get any money if I didn't sign those papers, end quote. But Anita was not going to go without a fight. She kept copies of all the letters, including her termination notice, and sent them to a Nashville attorney named Gary Blackburn. In her deposition, and while under oath, Gary asked Gwen questions about her Waydown practices, and Gwen stated, quote, when people were in prison camps and ate less food, they lost weight, all of them, end quote. Gary, surprised by this, then asked, Mrs. Shamblin, certainly you aren't making a comparison between the forced starvation of a population and middle-class Americans' eating habits. Are you honestly doing that? Gwen paused and then replied, quote, I have been for 15 years, and a lot of people responded, end quote. The lawsuit was later settled out of court, but Gwen was on a warpath. She began preaching to her congregants that Christian churches were under attack due to too many Christians sinning and not being held accountable. She also started using words like pure to describe how the church, which she called the true church, should be. During a Saturday sermon, Gwen even told remnant members, quote, what one must actually believe or do to be considered a true adherent of God's true religion. I've asked all these questions and wondered if there was a true church on this earth or not, or was it just going to exist in heaven? I have good news. I have found God's church, end quote. Gwen was, of course, talking about her church.
Tonight, newly obtained video shines new light into a controversial Brentwood church that has faced repeated accusations of being a cult.
Come home to true religion that is simple but powerful.
Are you a prophet?
I don't believe I know what my gift name is. So I will tell you, I'm still wrestling with that. I've been told that for years.
Eventually, Gwen would build Remnant Fellowship on 40 acres of land in Brentwood, the wealthiest county in Tennessee. Under Remnant Fellowship,
This is what most of them do. They get their nonprofit status. They don't pay any taxes. They use donation money. They buy big houses, big land, and then it ends up transferring out of the nonprofit to them. So it's like a loophole to be for profit, because all of your donations that are supposed to be going towards advancing the kingdom are really going towards buying mansions, buying boats, buying this, buying that, which, don't get me wrong, money is cool. But it's like when you go about it the wrong way, like lying to people for donations, and you're really doing it to enrich yourself, that's not right. Because a lot of people that they're getting donations from don't have the money to buy their Gucci bags. Do you know what I mean?
Umbrella and tax-exempt status. Gwen also purchased a 25-acre pre-Civil War plantation home called
And I think they just said Joni has like 2 mansions that are her residence, 2 very expensive mansions, plus other properties. So when they say things like, oh, well, we had other businesses, all of the money came from donations. All of the money came from donations. No, they didn't work a separate job. It's been said that they were collecting life insurance policies on multiple people, which is kind of disgusting and scary, because now they have an interest in you dying, and that's crazy. I'm
Ashlon, which was about 5 minutes from her church. Ashlon has 7 bedrooms and is also used as an event venue for Remnant Fellowship weddings. But Gwen didn't just build a church. Gwen built an industry. Under Remnant Fellowship's
And real quick, I am not against sewing at all. Sow where you grow. I sow into people. If I do it, if I visit a teaching and I feel like I was blessed by that teaching, and their Cash App pops up or their Venmo, I always sow into whatever I felt benefited me, whatever I felt like that really taught me something today. Oh, I walk away from this having more education than I came with. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna sow wherever I grow. And that, if you have it, if you don't have it, of course, like next time when you do have it, then whatever. Or buy books, support in some kind of way. I'm all for that. It's the line. It's the line that is disgusting. Like that lady Juanita Bynum, disgusting. But we'll get back into that later.
there's a financial planning company, a real estate company, a car repair company, a wedding and event venue, a homeschooling program, and a contracting company called Exodus Industries.
This reminds me
Exodus
of another
Industries
group that I
website
was a part
states it
of.
provides the surrounding cities with electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, architecture, concrete, and excavation services. It's business for Jesus. According to ex-members, Gwen decided she allegedly only wanted Remnant Fellowship members to work in these businesses, as she wanted to build a large community that was fully efficient on its own without any outside help. On their website, Remnant Fellowship states it helps members with everything from resume preparation, networking, interviewing, follow-up, and on-the-job guidance for all types of situations once a person is employed. Although Exodus Industries and the other companies are available to the surrounding cities and non-Remnant members are allegedly expected to only use services from within Remnant Fellowship. That would mean not only do these companies under Remnant Fellowship profit tax-free, but any of the money paid to their contractors allegedly goes right back into the organization. What Gwen was trying to do here is a known isolation and dependency tactic used in cults that makes members dependent on the head of the cult and those inside. If a member were to leave, not only would they lose their community, but most likely their livelihood as well.
Sounds like Joni. What is it that everybody's house? She owns everybody's house. This sounds like Joni Lamb. This sounds just like Joni.
Being that their employment comes from inside the cult. These types of restraints allow members to be more easily influenced and manipulated due to their livelihood being on the line. When it got back to Gwen that anyone, whether a member of the press or an ex-Remnant member, said something negative about Remnant Fellowship, Gwen would say that it was Satan twisting the truth because Remnant Fellowship was different from all other churches and exceptional. But some members were beginning to notice the contradictions between what Gwen preached and what Gwen did. Their hair is perfect, their bodies are trim, they submit to their husbands, and their children are well behaved. These are the Real Housewives of Remnant Fellowship. Some ex-members of Remnant Fellowship said they decided to follow Gwen because she was always so happy and positive, and they wanted that for themselves. But looks can be deceiving, because underneath this happy facade, something was brewing, something the FBI would soon take note of. According to the HBO documentary, The Way Down, Gwen told members who didn't lose
Yes,
2
the way
pounds
down.
per week to begin fast
The Way Down. That's what it was called. You have to see The Way Down. That documentary is so good.
One ex-member recalls church members sometimes fasting up to 40 days. This same church member was also told to quit eating after losing 100.
Okay, but in fairness, I think that the person who put this documentary together, what was her name again? Not the good girl. I think that she probably doesn't understand fasting, because a 40-day fast, like, I'm not against fasting. I think Gwen was doing it so that they would starve and look skinny so people would buy her program. But a 40-day fast is not necessarily like the worst thing in the world. So many people's testimonies say that they have received breakthrough through that. So if you have the strength and you could do a 40-day fast, I don't see anything wrong with a 40-day fast.
30 pounds in 18 months just so she could continue losing weight. On top of weekly tithing, ex-members say Gwen demanded that everyone be taking Way Down workshop classes regularly and continuously. But the cost of these workshops and products had to be purchased at the members' expense. Excluding the cost of books and workshops, the Way Down website also offers a subscription of $19.
And if you're watching this and you are a member of any of these religious organizations that make you pay a monthly fee, and then you have to pay extra for this conference and get this and get that, I don't know. We'll talk about that later.
$99 a month or $234.99 a year for what they call Way Down TV. In one Way Down TV video, Gwen said, quote, "Instead of buying extra food
That's the
this
exact
week,
same price
buy
too.
this book and keep it by your side," end quote. Speaking of children, in 2003, the FBI raided Way Down Ministries and Remnant Fellowship.
Remnant Fellowship is now part of a murder investigation.
I won't go into the gruesome details of this case, and will leave a link below this video in the description box if you're interested in learning more, but here's the rundown of what happened. Joseph and Sonia Smith were two devout members of Remnant Fellowship and a couple of Way Down success stories, and both were sentenced to life plus 30 years in prison after their 8-year-old son, Joseph, passed away.
This is God's word. I didn't come up with spankings. I'm not going to hide behind the fact that our good Lord says, do not spare the rod.
Remnant leader Ted Anger. As far as a pat on the bottom, as a last resort, and it's always in love. But two of Remnant's members, Joseph and Sonia Smith, now sit in jail charged with killing their 8-year-old son, Joseph. Investigators wrote that the child had extensive bruising over his entire body, but the parents showed no remorse. They felt it was just a part of discipline and were very defensive about their religion. Does Remnant advocate repeated spankings of children over and over and over?
No, absolutely not. No, sir. Absolutely not. 2 or 3 spankings would not be enough. I mean, it could be 10 spankings.
Former Remnant members Terry and David Phillips say Shamblin not only encouraged spankings, but stressed they must be severe.
But you had to make the spanking count. If they're not scared of spanking, you didn't spank them. If you hadn't really spanked them yet, you don't love them. You love yourself.
Gwen is a liar, just like Joni is a liar. Joni Lamb is a liar. She has no issue with just lying straight to anyone.
To feel the pain and that they were being disobedient.
Would it ever be appropriate to spank a 2-year-old over and over and over and over and over and over in one night?
That's not what we teach here, Phil.
A year ago, our 2.5-year-old Avery, we had a real showdown with her.
But in this conference call with Remnant women, another Remnant leader, David Martin, holds out his own showdown spanking with his daughter as an example.
And we had a leg spanking over and over and over and over and over and over again. And time one evening.
Okay, you're listening. Okay, well then you need to talk to David Martin about that then, because that's not.
And you agree that was the perfect way to handle a child.
David Martin had a real showdown. It was a one-night showdown, and that child never forgot it.
But are you asking? Does that go on very often? Are you kidding? No, it does not. It is so rare.
Okay, now pause. Although Gwen tried to brush off David Martin as just one of the many leaders in her church she didn't have control over, my research into the early days of Remnant Fellowship led me straight to David Martin and his wife, as they were the first people who followed Gwen and founded Remnant Fellowship with her. And 20 years later, David Martin can be seen in many videos on Remnant Fellowship and Gwen's YouTube channel, singing on stage and teaching. And there are videos of the couple at parties in Gwen's home. David and his wife are also featured exclusively on the Remnant Fellowship website. David Martin wasn't just another leader in Remnant Fellowship. David Martin was one of the highest ranking members on the inside. And play.
Shamblin tells her followers not to worry about their children's self-esteem, instead worry about what she calls their God-esteem. In the case of young Joseph, investigators say that meant his parents repeatedly locked him up in a small room with just his Bible. Does Remnant advocate locking children up for lengthy periods of time?
No, they don't advocate locking them up for any period of time. Absolutely not.
Ted told me to do, take everything out of the room. We got everything out of there and left him in there from that Friday until Monday, and only left him in the room with his Bible.
That tape has been made or tampered or whatever.
This right here, she does not care that this child lost being here on this earth because what she told the parents to do. Just like Joni does not care at all what happened to her granddaughter. All she cares about is the Daystar image, which, by the way, at this point, I really don't think there's going to be any saving it. I think she could go on. She does have the money to, but yeah, this is disgusting. This right here, Gwen Shamblin, is Joni Lamb. Joni Lamb is going to meet her fate. She's not going to continue running. Rachel Lamb is making it 10 times worse, making all of these different X accounts and just being, I don't even have the proper words to speak to Christians when it comes to what I want to say about Rachel. So I'll take some time to try to figure out how to
totally deny
That is absolutely
that has
untrue.
ever been said by anyone. And that's a miracle. You've got
She's a liar.
that's going from just bizarre down to in control. So praise God.
And you had a chance to tell her that was not correct.
That was not on there.
Instead, you said, praise the Lord.
No, that was not on there.
There's a recording of Joni, and then she lies about it. No, we didn't say that I'm the voice of God. We just meant that, like, I'm the boss. Okay, no, quit lying. You guys just lie so much. Just stop lying.
Are spoiling these kids. We are, ruining their lives by even letting them think about themselves at all. So thank you, Sonia, for sharing that.
Gwen called it gotcha journalism and claimed Remnant Fellowship's teaching had nothing to do with the
Blame the journalist, just like Joni calling Julie Roy's names, unnecessary names, talking about her like she has a personal problem with her for doing her job. Okay, this lady's supposed to be running a Christian ministry, a big giant Christian ministry, and here she is calling Julie Roy's names. Crazy.
scene of the 8-year-old Smith boy, and neither Gwen nor any of the church leaders were charged with a crime. But instead of speaking out against the Smiths' behavior, not only did Remnant Fellowship pay the Smiths legal fees, but also created a website defending the Smiths, claiming that the FBI, police, and investigative journalists misled the public and the court. 18 years later, the website, thesmithsareinnocent.com, is still running, and it attempts to explain what happened, while also blaming what Gwen called false accusations on ex-Remnant church members, claiming those ex-members were spreading rumors about Remnant Fellowship. However, a coroner and a judge refuted what the Smiths and Gwen said happened. While telling the horrific story of that fatal day, the website makes sure to mention that Joseph Smith lost 80 pounds and Sonia Smith lost 150 pounds through the Way Down workshop.
That's crazy.
The site also contains a tab that leads directly to Gwen's website, where one can purchase her curriculum. As Gwen's congregation and profits grew throughout the years, so did her hair and assets. And Gwen built a fortune that included over 18 properties outside of Remnant Fellowship that she put in a trust. Other than her weight, Gwen loved to live large and in charge. She regularly hosted parties with alcohol and elaborate decor.
Didn't we just hear about Rachel Lamb's lingerie parties and all these expensive parties that they throw, and they have to be edited because they're not Christian parties, so they edit them to make them look decent? The parallels are scary. It's almost like it's a spirit in operation.
Got her hair and makeup done for free by church members, as they believed
what?
it was a service unto
just heard
God.
that.
Remnant
Service
Fellowship hosted festivals several times a year, and members would bring large gift baskets filled with food as donations for the church. Gwen called their 2019 festival the Goddess
That
of
looks
Good
fun.
Festival, but it was at this specific festival she told church members not to bring gift baskets anymore, only money.
Oh,
Gwen taught that if one was obedient, God would shower you with blessings and abundance. Gwen took the Bible literally and believed in blessings for obedience, curses for disobedience. When anything bad happened to Remnant Fellowship or someone in it, members had been indoctrinated by Gwen to believe it was because of their sins and God's judgment. Gwen's church used something called family checkups to investigate their church members' so-called wrongdoings. According to ex-members of Remnant, there is an alleged hierarchy inside the church, and depending on where you belong, your life could be made easier or more difficult. But the doors that led you closer to Gwen and all the luxury she had to offer could be shut on a member at any time for any reason. You see, within Remnant
that
Fellowship,
sounds so familiar. That sounds like Joni Lamb. Okay.
Gwen appointed leaders who were all men. These male leaders had different groups in the congregation they were responsible for, meaning church members were supposed to report anything and everything about their lives and problems to their church leaders, and these leaders reported directly to Gwen. One day, church members were
She
alerted
has
with
them by
horrific
the.
news. Gwen's youngest grandchild had suddenly passed away from an illness, and they were asked to pray. But that next Sunday, ex-church members reported everything feeling eerie because neither Gwen nor the church leaders.
The documentary goes into more detail about that, and it's pretty messed up the way that she treated her own daughter when this happened. So I would check out the documentary too. That's just.
Spoke of the death. Instead, members were told it would no longer be mentioned, and everyone was expected to act, well, normal. As strange as that may sound, delusion and denial under the guise of happiness is common in cults, and many ex-members of Remnant Fellowship recall that all members had to be happy, look.
And we're just going over the parallels here, how identical Joni Lamb and Gwen Shamblin are to each other. And Gwen Shamblin also has a lot of parallels with like Juanita Bynum and a couple of other cult groups that I know of. But I am going to link this video in wherever it lets me link it. I don't really know how to use YouTube yet, but I'm gonna put this video somewhere, wherever I could.
Act perfect at all times. This is also what's known as toxic positivity. One ex-member in the HBO documentary The Way Down reported that after that Sunday, when no one spoke on the loss of Gwen's grandchild, she and her husband were called into the church for a family checkup, where the leaders implied that Gwen's family was not being judged by God, so it had to be someone from the church, and they were, quote, bringing in the strugglers to assess how they're doing, because God's bringing judgment on this church, and we want to know where it's coming from. Yes, Gwen was blaming the passing of a family member on her congregants. Life in Remnant Fellowship was all about submitting to authority. If a church member needed counseling, they allegedly were not allowed to seek help from a therapist for fear of retribution. They were instead supposed to call their given church leader and receive counseling from him, even though these leaders weren't licensed therapists or psychologists. This all.
Just like Joni, remember, they didn't want to involve anybody that could potentially involve authorities. So this is exactly like what Joni did. After her son Jonathan caught Pete in the room with his daughter, they did an internal counseling type of deal, which Denise Boggs, she seems awesome. She involved somebody, and then they cut that other person off because they didn't want the truth to come out. They wanted to cut it off then and there. So another
applied to a church member's marriage, as spouses allegedly were only supposed to seek marriage counseling from their given church leader.
Former Remnant
Church members through text messages, email, and phone calls, and they even controlled whether church members could have a social media account or not. If allowed to have a social media presence, the leaders restricted what members could post and who they could follow. Many female ex-members of Remnant recall never being allowed to go against their husband's wishes at any time. They were allegedly supposed to ask their husband about something once and never again, no matter his decision. If Remnant women weren't submissive to their husbands in any way, husbands would complain to the leaders, and the women were allegedly forced to be counseled at the church. Many of these female ex-members also recall being told by their church leaders to stay in their marriages after their husbands cheated on them, sometimes even having multiple affairs. Their church leaders would quote scripture on forgiveness and ask the women to welcome them back.
Because Gwen was so against divorce. You got to remember that. She was so against divorce. She's still married during this time. She was so against divorce until she met somebody else. And then it was okay. And then she switched up her ministry style to talk about how it's okay to get divorced. Isn't that crazy? She was so against divorce, and then all of a sudden, now she's for divorce. Just like Joni. Almost like it's a spirit.
With open arms. That's because Gwen was against divorce, no matter the circumstance. Although Gwen preached the importance of a conservative, heterosexual family unit where the wife is submissive unto her husband, Gwen's husband David didn't come around often. David Shamblin has a master's in divinity, and in the beginning days of Remnant Fellowship, Gwen stated David, not herself, was head of Remnant Fellowship. Some speculate maybe he was hidden due to not fitting in with Gwen's image. Other ex-members speculate that David didn't like Gwen mixing money with religion. Yet, Gwen still stood firm on her beliefs and continued to preach about a strong family unit, and that divorce was wrong under any circumstance. That is, until one day when Joe Lara came to church. Joe Lara was a man who wore many hats. Joe wondered how much cash was hiding under all that hair. And suddenly, Gwen's sermons on divorce changed, and she quickly filed for divorce from David Shamblin, her husband of 40 years. In their divorce,
Kind of like Doug did, right? Kind of just like Doug. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy how
Joe wondered how much cash was hiding under all that hair. And suddenly, Gwen's sermons on divorce changed, and she quickly filed for divorce from David Shamblin, her husband of 40 years. In their divorce, David and Gwen split 18 different pieces of property, totaling more than $20 million worth of real estate. Gwen also paid David over $3 million in cash.
Look, America is in trouble here. We got just as much divorce inside the church as out. The church has morphed into the world.
But Shamblin's new views on divorce and remarriage, posted to the church's website around the same time she decided to divorce her own husband, insisted that God himself divorced Israel, his bride, for turning away from the faith. So there should be no judgment towards saints, meaning remnant members, as they strive to help build a pure church.
Could Gwen have seen Joe as a willing and devout husband she could strategically?
I know people have been very nice regarding the death of Marcus Lamb, but with everything that has come to light and who was in the room when he passed and how they thought he was going to survive and couldn't imagine that he wasn't going to survive, and saying that Joni was on the phone with Doug for like 9 hours and that she was in communication with him before, I think they were flirting before. I think they started their flirtation when he was coming in the studio, when he was still married, when Marcus was still alive. It seems like they already had some type of chemistry. And maybe she never really forgave him. Maybe she had a grudge. And when she got these feelings for Doug, who knows what she was thinking when he was in the hospital. It's not uncommon for people, especially somebody like her, it's not uncommon for people to get rid of their partner. It's just not adding up now. And no, I don't have proof. So before anybody says, oh, without proof, because we know Rachel, she likes to make a bunch of little bot accounts and then say this and that about proof. No, we don't have proof. All we have is the thoughts in our head because it looks bad. It looks bad.
And publicly have by her side at all times? Someone to show off to others, like in their engagement video shown here? In what just may be the fanciest wedding Tennessee has ever seen?
And have you
Gwen
seen
Shamblin
Joni's
became
video
Gwen
of her wedding?
Shamblin Lara.
Gwen did outdo
Gwen's wedding
Joni
had 1,500 people
a
in
lot,
attendance and featured a procession
but
of,
they're very
as
similar.
around 34 flower girls and 15
Very
bridesmaids.
similar for their
Gwen was covered
next
in
wedding,
glitter,
not
glowing
first
arches
wedding.
covered the length of the stage, and Joe told his bride, quote, "If the dark forces should ever manifest against us, I vow to never
I'll link it. These people.
where a camera and sound crew followed the couple around Remnant Fellowship, Echelon Mansion, and filmed Joe's music videos. Yes, Remnant Fellowship has a recording studio where Joe was free to record as many songs as he wanted. In true prosperity gospel fashion, Gwen and Joe created videos with titles such as Seeking God on Vacations, How to Have Parties All About God, and How to Be Humble and Expect Nothing, where they preach about humbleness while strolling across the manicured lawn of their mansion. Many say that after Joe came into the picture, Gwen's sermons became shorter while her vacations got longer. But there was trouble in
I think we
paradise.
heard about that
Joe
too.
Lara was in a custody battle with his ex.
About them being like upset about Joni spending what, like $150,000. I can't remember how much it was, but she spent like $150,000 of Daystar's money, donation money, on a vacation. I think it was a honeymoon vacation. So similar.
Partner Natasha over their daughter, and it was not going well.
Some help. Please get some help. You're a sick, sick girl.
That's Joe Lara,
Get some help. Get some help.
recorded by his ex-girlfriend, Natasha Pavlovich.
However, the ugly court battle and the Life with Gwen and Joe show would go no further because one Sunday in May of 2021, the music stopped.
What News 4 Investigates has uncovered tonight raises questions about the qualifications of the pilot at the helm of a deadly plane crash. That pilot, Joe Lara, his wife, and 5 other members of Remnant Church died when the plane crashed into Percy Priest Lake on May 29th.
Yes, Gwen and Joe, as they believed, were sent home to meet their maker. Gwen and Joe, along with 5 other members of Remnant Fellowship, including David Martin and his wife, boarded a small Cessna plane ready to fly from Tennessee to attend a Trump rally in Florida.
What?
Joe
Oh my gosh, I did not even.
As the pilot, but he never ended up getting them out of Tennessee as the plane crashed into a lake.
Wow.
Joe Lara first received his pilot license at 16.
What are the chances that... Do you see this? Do you see how identical? Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm just learning YouTube and I'm just...
Years old. Out of the 7 people on board, there was not a single survivor. In an ironic twist of fate, it was reported that the plane went down because it was overweight in capacity.
Like Aaliyah. Overweight and capacity. I will never get on a small plane.
So, where has this place Remnant Fellowship? Well, after saying on national television that half of her will was going to God and the church, Gwen didn't leave a single cent of her estate to Remnant Fellowship. Only her 2 children, Michael and Elizabeth Shamblin.
Was her ministry about God, or was it about Gwen? Our investigation first raised questions about Gwen Shamblin 20 years ago. Now we've discovered the estate she left
You already
behind,
know.
potentially worth millions of dollars,
You already
is something
know.
to add to those questions.
This money, half of it goes to the government, the other half goes to keep it going so that someone else can be helped.
It was a legacy stemming from her days as founder of the Way Down Workshop of false claims about her own wealth.
Half and half leaves nothing for Gwen Shamblin. That's not completely true, is it?
Yes, it's completely true.
I hate to say this to some degree because she's deceased, but she struck me as a 100% phony.
Joni
Grifter.
Lamb.
Gangster.
1000%.
National lawyer Gary Blackburn sued Shamblin 20 years ago.
The money is going to go to
Girl.
David and I.
Getting her to admit under oath
Trust
that she
me.
was indeed profiting from her ministry.
We will be watching a documentary about Joni Lamb and Daystar. It's not going to happen soon, but within about 5 years. It'll be about 5 years. There'll be a documentary about Joni Lamb, about Daystar, and about everything that went on in there, because people are going to keep coming forward. Come forward, okay? Come forward, guys. Just speak up. You can hide your face. You can remain anonymous. Just come forward. Come forward.